This is the story of how, as a young child, about 6 years old, I escaped from being given powerful antipsychotic medication. Now, to understand just how close this came, I mean, hair's breadth, there are a couple of key points of context that you need to know. The first of which is that my parents are both psychologists. Go ahead, get out of your system. A lot of that. Yeah. So on the one hand, they were very suspicious of any psychiatric flim-flam or a lack of clarity. On the other hand, they were keenly attuned to what might be symptoms. Oh, just absolutely on the lookout. And part of the reason they were so on the lookout is the second thing you need to know, which is that there is a pretty severe history of mental illness in my mother's family. Now, I don't mean severe mental illness like, oh, everybody is so miserable and they drive each other crazy and family reunions are horrible. No, that's my dad's side. No. This is severe mental illness like my mother's mother went through electroconvulsive therapy and died addicted to booze and sleeping pills, and that wasn't even a mental illness. No, she just had the misfortune, as I understand it, of having been born a woman in the wrong time and place and married the wrong guy and was very intelligent and interesting and never had a chance to express it, so naturally what does she do? But she drinks and takes pills. Saying that that's a mental illness is a little like telling women who live under the Taliban, no, the problem is your serotonin. That's your issue right there. So that shit was going down, and that wasn't even the mentally ill part. No, this was severe mental illness of the sort that actually seeps into a family's DNA and becomes a terrible secret for generations. A terrible secret, not like I didn't know until I was 20 years old that my mother's brother was autistic. I mean, I didn't know until I was 20 years old that my mom had a brother. It was incredible. I was a junior in college, back home for the summer, and I come to my mom's house one day, and there's a big pile of mail, and I was still getting mail at my mom's house sometimes, so I go through it just to see if there's anything for me. I swear I was not snooping, but I couldn't help but notice a letter addressed to my mom in crayon. And so later when she comes home, I say, Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't stupid, but I'm really curious, what's that about, if you can tell me? And she says, oh, that's from Doug. Who's Doug? Well, he's my brother. What? You're what? No, what? No. Oh, did you not know? Ah! No, I didn't know. No. The story, as I can understand it, is that he was born autistic at a time when this was blamed on the mother, once again, lucky her. And so, they couldn't handle him, so having some money, they shipped him off to a facility and put a little endowment there, and it was never spoken of again. That's the severity that we're talking about, and that's not even the really bad part. It took me 10 more years to find out that my mom's uncles had a bad habit of being schizophrenic and killing themselves. I'm still not sure I have all the details, to be quite honest. So, severe mental illness. They were worried. They were kind of worried when they had a kid. I was their first child, and stuff runs in families. They're on the lookout. And here's the third thing that you had to understand, is that I was a really weird kid. I mean, aggressively hyper-weird kid. The kind of kid who, when a grown-up is trying to say something nice about you, and they really want to, the only thing they can think of is, well, you have quite an imagination. That was me. So, I mean, to spoil the story a little bit, years later, just a few years ago, in fact, after getting some of the stuff about my great uncles, I was visiting my dad, and I said to him, it's funny, I just had a conversation with Mom, and she told me about Ron's brothers, and I think I now have a sense of why you were so paranoid back in the day about my being schizophrenic or something. I mean, and he says, no, we had good reason to worry. I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you were displaying symptoms. I said, I was? What are you talking about? He said, well, you were hearing voices. You said they were from another planet, and you had these visual hallucinations that you couldn't get rid of. I just stared at him. I said, you believe me? And his face went white, and you could see him reevaluating the past 30 years of his life. So, anyway, you put it all together. you put it all together, and I was a kid in serious trouble. Now, it's of course possible that part of the reason why I was such a bizarre child is that I belonged to a family with a history of severe mental illness on one side and deep misery on the other that was paranoid about anything that I did being a symptom of mental illness, but never mind. They were trying the best they could. This is not about assigning blame. This is about me as a 6-year-old and my parents deciding that this stuff that I was telling them meant that something was very, very wrong and that they had to get it looked into. Now, we lived in Indiana at the time, so, but being psychologists, they knew who the best private diagnostician in Indiana was. So, we went to Indianapolis, and I went in this room and met this older guy, and we talked for a while, and he played some games. Well, I had no idea what was going on. And when we're done, he writes up a report and says to my parents, well, I don't know what's going on here, but he clearly has a thought disorder. So let's give him this stuff. And so here's the medication I'm recommending. My parents said, wait a minute, you can't diagnose him either? Well, no, I mean, it doesn't fit any clear diagnostic criteria, but let's put him on this. My parents, God bless them, said, we're getting a second opinion. So they took me to the second best diagnostician in Indianapolis. And I went to the room with this old gentleman, played some games, had a little conversation, got to throw some darts on a wall. And he comes out, and he tells my parents, well, obviously he's got some kind of psychotic break here, but I don't know exactly what, but something. So here's the medication I'm recommending for him. And I said, oh, I think we're going to get a third opinion, because we'd actually like to know what he's suffering from before we medicate him. Thank you, Mom and Dad. So, third guy, fourth guy, fifth guy. They went through pretty much the entire psychiatric diagnostic community in central Indiana. Okay? I mean, this went on. I was bored stiff by this point. I had no idea what the stakes were. All I know is I was kept taken into these rooms with these guys, and the games never changed. Really no fun. I was probably getting worse as it went by, because I had it up to here by now with this shit. I mean, whatever that was. So, finally, they're so desperate that they take me to the local hospital clinic. I mean, this is way down from the best diagnostician in Indianapolis. Way down. There's a guy named Mike. And Mike takes me in, talks to me, plays the game, so on and so forth. And then he's the guy who comes out and tells my parents, oh, he's fine. He's fine. And they look at each other and they say, well, not that we're not relieved to hear that, but how do you know? You're the only person saying that. And Mike says, okay, well, here's the way it goes. You give an ordinary person a Rorschach test, the ink blot test, Okay, you give it to them, and they say, well, that's a rabbit, and that's a chicken, and I don't know, that's a farm, who knows, they're ink blots. You give a Rorschach test to somebody who is having a psychotic break, or a true schizophrenic episode, or what have you, and they say, oh, well, that's the alien ship that is coming to pick me up and take me by. You give it to Caveat, and Caveat says, oh, well, that's the alien ship that is coming to pick me up and take me to my own home planet. But on the way here, it's going to be intercepted by this pencil holder, which is another ship from another planet. This one's Mars, that one's Venus, and they're going to see each other. There's a history of antagonism between these two planets. So they're going to call in reinforcements, and maybe those are these pencils, I don't know, and this is your notepad over here. There's going to be a space war, and it's going to be big, and all these things are going to get wiped out. Some are going to crash to Earth, and that's where things are going to get interesting, because they're going to come looking for me. And the parents say, right, well, what does this tell you? And Mike says, he's trying too hard. And they decided to go with Mike, and the rest is history. Now I am who will stand before you. Thank you very much.